How do I know that I'm nearsighted or I'm farsighted? Because I'm relying on some basic reliability of my senses. Okay, so because I have some basic reliability that indicates that other facets of my senses are less than perfect.
Right. So isn't it possible to just not know? Like, for instance, let's say there's someone who it just isn't
Not
really
know,
that
not know what.
um just not be sure of their source of knowledge, I guess. But
No,
did you answer that?
one will either purposely acknowledge that God is their source. Once you reach a certain neurological state and the idea of God enters into your mind, something that you cannot ever eradicate, you can suppress it, but you can't eradicate it. And so on a day by day, moment by moment basis, you will either acknowledge God as your creator or you will refuse to do so for whatever reason.
Right. So
There is, look, it's really simple. There's no neutrality. It doesn't exist.
right. Okay. I guess I can see where you're coming from.
Do you understand that neutrality is a myth?
Oh, I'm
The very
okay.
idea of being neutral toward God is the denial of God.
So what if you say something like, okay, my senses are possibly reliable because there is possibly some God that's giving me reliable senses,
No,
but I'm just not sure now. Yeah, go ahead.
Either we're going to acknowledge God as our ultimate reference point chronologically and contemporarily, or we will refuse to do so. Now, sometimes people are going to be honest with themselves and others and just saying, yeah, I refuse to acknowledge God. And so therefore, I'm just going to stipulate that the things in the world, they just simply exist for whatever reason, stand alone, without the necessity of attribution toward God. But there are other people that are less than transparent who just want to sit there and just saying, "Oh, I don't know. I'm undecided." No, you are decided. You've decided that it's not necessary to reference God as your creator.
I mean, but for me, like, I'm genuinely like unsure.
No,
I
you're
mean,
not.
I don't know,
No, you're
maybe.
not. No, you're not, sir. Right now, I'm going to ask you a question, right? Now, you may have convinced yourself on an ongoing basis that you're undecided. I can buy that. But you're not actually undecided because you've decided you refuse to invoke facts with reference to the necessity of God. You refuse to do that right now. You will not do that. I'll ask you right now, when you invoke facts, will you acknowledge the necessity of God as the ultimate precondition of all such facts? Will you do that right now?
I don't know how to give you like a satisfying
I'm asking you what you will. Will you do that? You see, your silence is indicating that you refuse to do so.
But
you refuse to acknowledge right now God is your creator. You refuse to. But you don't want to admit that you're denying God, so you hide behind vocabulary and phraseology, and you just go, "Well, I'm unconvinced." Well, telling me listen, let me explain something to you. If somebody claims that they're unconvinced about God versus unconvinced about the Loch Ness Monster, we're talking about two different metaphysical states. These are completely different categories. So one can truly be unconvinced about the Loch Ness Monster, where it are we going to do that again?
Sorry.
Well, hold on a second, Ari. Hold on. You got muted before. Do you want to do that again?
Oh no, so sorry.
I'm asking you, sir.
Speak up, tough guy.
You think I didn't hear you? Okay, Damon, bye-bye. Hit the road, Jack.
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear the question.
No,
Sorry, I got a bit
he,
distracted.
no, he said I was special pleading. This is the little drive-by tactics that show that these people are insincere little trolls. And it shows you that they have a genuine inferiority complex, because if they felt that they had the intellectual higher ground on this issue, they would open their mouth instead of doing these drive-by comments.
Wait, I'm genuinely trying to understand.
Back and to the left. Back and to the left. Now, if somebody says, I'm unconvinced about God, that is non-informative to me in a certain respect. Because everybody who denies the existence of God is unconvinced, right?
Okay, I guess so, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So then we could have some people who claim they're not denying God, but who will maintain that they're unconvinced. So somebody saying to me, well, I'm unconvinced, is not informative. Well, are you unconvinced because you deny the existence of God? Or are you unconvinced because you are truly claiming that you're neutral and suspending judgment? So what you will see is many people who know that they're God deniers, and they know that they cannot defend their God denialism, will hide behind phraseology and vocabulary trying to cast themselves. You have to forgive me, I have a cold, so that's why I'm pausing so I don't cough.
Yeah.
They will I don't want to say not caricature, they will characterize themselves in vocabulary to communicate that they're just neutral bystanders, and they just have insufficient information. But that's not the case. So when somebody says I'm unconvinced, either way, this is problematic. If they're purposely doing it clandestinely to hide their God denialism, or that the person has convinced themselves that they're not God deniers, but that they're undecided and suspending judgment, I can show them right away that they haven't suspended judgment. They've decided that God is unworthy of being invoked as the necessary precondition of facts. So neutrality toward God as creator is hostility toward God as creator, because of the category that God is in. Now, neutrality toward Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster is not hostility, because these are in completely different categories. And everybody knows that God is in a category unlike anything else. And that's not special pleading.
Okay, I guess, yeah. I guess I'll have to think about it.
Yeah,
So
well, this makes people very uncomfortable. And I understand if it makes you uncomfortable, because now you're being made cognizant of the fact that you're denying God one way or another. Some people deny God, but they verbalize, but I'm not denying God. Well, how about the guy who's arrested in Central Park committing rape, and he says, what are you arresting me for? And he says, rape. He goes, well, I didn't rape her. Just making love to her without her consent. Okay.
Right. Okay. And yeah, so I guess I would be denying it in some sense, because I don't hold a view.
Well, the denial can be explicit, it can be implicit, it can be overt, it can be covert, it can be direct or indirect.
Okay, yeah, I guess.
By the way, this is a very narrow view that I'm putting forth. It's extremely uncommon. Even professional philosophers would probably take issue with this, but the reason why they do it is because they're not accustomed to thinking transcendentally. Okay? People want the refuge of going into a fog of indecision about God, but they've already made a decision about acknowledging God when they run into the fog in order to hide from acknowledging God.
Okay, I see. And I guess my final question.
If somebody says to me, I'm undecided, I'm unconvinced, au contraire, you've already decided that the facts around you don't motivate you, that they must be recognized as being indicative and revelatory of the eternal, and that the denial thereof is impossible. So they think that the denial thereof is possible. People don't like this analysis because it really sheds the spotlight. Either you're going to be a friend of God or you're going to be an enemy of God. And there are enemies of God who will openly say, I'm an enemy of God. But there are people who are enemies of God who say, oh, but I'm not an enemy of God. I'm just undecided about whether I'm being a friend of God or not, or an enemy.
Okay. And I guess the last thing I wanted to ask is, how do you know that you're referring to the Christian God and not, like, I don't know, the Islamic God, for instance?
Well, because the God of the Bible's revelation in creation and through human history within the composite Christian scriptures as a composite message is self-authenticating and self-attesting. And what I mean by that is that the composite nature of the character of the God of the Bible and his creation are, number one, exclusive. No other God can have this attribute set. And his attribute set is indispensable, and you cannot do without it. And if you claim that you can do without it, then you're going to have to explain how you can walk, chew gum, reason, and be intelligible about things without the exclusive character set of the God of the Bible, which will not be able to be. It's not something metaphysically you're going to be able to do. The Islamic God is not always truth revealing. The Islamic God has amnesia about his own name in the Old Testament. The Islamic God can't even correctly stipulate the Christian doctrine of the Trinity when he condemns it in the Quran. I mean, this is how bad, look, anybody who studies Islam from a ruthlessly objective position knows that it's just a really stupid and derivational cult of Christianity. The only people who aren't aware of it are the Muslims.
Right. Okay. And actually, I do have one more question. Could you explain more of the metaphysics on why being neutral is? I know you explained this already, but could you go deeper in the metaphysics on why you can't be neutral, if you don't mind? Oh, sorry. Did you hear that?
I'm sorry, I was pushing down the wrong button. Yeah, what we have is a dichotomous position. Either we will acknowledge our creatureliness. Okay. All right, just give me a second. I got to put a note down in his account.
But yeah, Jesus says amen, and I encourage everyone to take it seriously. There's no more important or greater question. So the main thing that separates us from Christ is our love for our sins, our excuses, our self-rationalizations, our self-justifications. So definitely put God first, for He is good. We're all sinners in need of a Savior.
What we have is we have a dichotomous situation. Either we acknowledge our creatureliness or we will deny it by virtue of refusing to acknowledge our creatureliness.
Okay.
This is not like other situations. Like if somebody says, I make no declaration about ultimate reality, that's a declaration about ultimate reality while claiming you're not making a declaration about ultimate reality. Okay? It's a universal it's a universal declaration which is self-referential. To say I make no declaration about ultimate reality is in effect to make a claim that you are in no need of declaring the necessity of stipulating ultimate reality. So to state I make no declaration about ultimate reality is self-referential and it is self-stultifying. Okay? It's a good vocabulary word, self-stultifying. It implodes upon itself. And this makes people very uncomfortable because they don't want to acknowledge God. They don't want to accept that God is and that he's revealed himself in creation, yet they don't have the courage of their convictions to defend their God denialism. So that's why you'll find in my interactions with people, day in and day out, they resort to trolling, bickering, being obnoxious, rude, rabbit trailing, lying, obfuscating. repeating the same responses that get rebutted without a counter rebuttal. You see, unbelievers have no choice but to acknowledge that God is and that he's revealed himself. They don't have any other choice because the refusal to do so cannot be sustained.
Hey, Darth. I wanted to ask you another question. I asked you something.
And to the left.
I asked you a question the other day, and I cut out. I kind of want to ask you a different question, though. I may have asked this before. If I have asked you the same questions before, sometimes it takes me a couple times for it to get drilled into my head. So I may ask you the same thing a couple times. But anyway, what if somebody resorted to the Hindu god, right? And they say, oh, well, Brahma is my ultimate. This is the foundation of all truth.
Well, Brahman is all. There are no actual distinctions, okay? So in Hinduism, it is pantheism. Pantheism is incoherent.
Just real quick, yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I'm a Christian. I've talked to you before, but so are you saying there is no sect of Hinduism that they believe in like one ultimate creator God? Are you saying?
Well, you are correct. There are different versions of Hinduism, but there is no other God that is invoked in all of human history that can be invoked and instantiated as being ultimate like the Christian God. Okay.
All right.
Like, for example, the other day, somebody was invoking Ra, the Egyptian god, okay, that allegedly created the world. But when you actually look into it, Ra emerged from either water or a mound of dirt, which means he's contingent. He's not ultimate. Okay. So and you see, the dirty little secret is people, even though they may not be sophisticated theologically or philosophically in terms of apologetics, they all know that the God of the Bible is the best candidate for the one and only true God, but they just don't want to bow the knee to Jesus Christ. So they just come up with all these convoluted responses.
Well, of course. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I obviously agree and whatnot. I might cut out here. You still hear me? Sometimes I cut out. I think I should be all right, maybe. But yeah, I'm just wondering on like how the correct way to approach if somebody makes the claim like, oh, well, someone could make a claim that it's the Hindu God is the ultimate. Like, what is
Sergeant, are you a Christian?
Well, yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, is God's revelation of Himself self-attesting and self-authenticating?
Is God's revelation of Himself? I mean, I'm going to assume I don't know exactly what you're saying, but I'm going to go ahead and say yes.
Okay. Well, then, right. if it is, then it's impossible to refute. So whatever counter proposals they come up with will, number one, be a figment of their imagination. Number two, content-wise, they couldn't refute the revelation of God. So that's what you must always keep in their mind. While you're listening to them, they're making this up as they go along, nor can the content refute the revelation of God. Okay? And so, we recognize... Yeah, go ahead.
So you're saying is God ultimately revealing and whatnot? That's what you asked me, and I said yes, he's ultimately revealing. Well, what if they come back and say, well, the Hindu God has revealed himself, and he's revealed himself in this way?
Well, but you see, the problem is, you're talking about a real Hindu?
I know. I was more so talking to atheists.
Well, then what they're just simply doing is they're attempting to send me on a wild goose chase.
I get it.
To throw out worldview body doubles, and as I systematically refute them, they're gonna go, aha, I don't even believe these anyway. So I've wasted my time.
I get it. But how? But what's the right?
It's only interesting to respond to that is if the person's truly a Hindu. If they're not truly a Hindu, then they're wasting your time.
but I get what you're saying, but it's at the same time, it's like it's nice to have some type of ammunition to shoot it down and be like, no.
Well, here's the
this
problem.
can't-
In Hinduism, we're talking about pantheism. Pantheism, upon evaluation, is not coherent. So
Well, again, though,
God,
but
listen. In Hinduism, your consciousness, my consciousness, and every other atheist on this planet is part of God's consciousness. So God's arguing with himself.
But then again, though, what I'm saying is there is certain sects of Hinduism that do claim that there is an ultimate.
But okay, so you're talking about well, there typically in historical Hinduism, there's not a creator-creature distinction. So you would be talking about a very small minority within the branch of Hinduism that would be explicating a creator-creature distinction. In classical historical Hinduism, there is not a creator-creature distinction.
So aside from saying like, yes, this is only a small minority believes this, what else is there?
And when they start to give us the property set, they're never going to be able to match the property set of the Christian God, because if they did, that would be the Christian God.
The property set. You have to maybe we reword
well, the
that.
Christian God's property set includes not only his omniscience and his omnipotence and his always truth revealing, and that he's love. He's also a redemptive God, and he's a God who has communicated in history. He's a historical God, and he's also incarnated himself as his own self-testimony and demonstrating he's a redemptive God by dying on the cross. So where is their God being redemptive? Because either their God is redemptive or it's not redemptive. That their God's not redemptive, then maybe they see that there's not a problem with humanity and that their God is okay with murder, rape, and lying. And
so then you're saying basically is that then if somebody that's where you said like, well, if they are really a Hindu, then you basically then want to compare and contrast.
It's really very simple. It's very simple. Okay. The God of the Bible reveals himself, and that when we look across the spectrum of the Christian scriptures, we can characterize God's revelation of his attribute set as being ultimate. Okay. In one word, he's ultimate. He's perfect. Okay. Now that cannot be matched by any other God.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah. And we could do that by looking to prophecies, and we looked at the testament of Jesus Christ.
So somebody will say to me, "Well, my God is just like your God. He's just not your God." And I say, "Good. Where's your God in history?" And look, you see, what we're dealing with 99% of the times are people that are just being trolls and making this stuff up. The 1% of the time, they're nuts.
Yeah. So I think that's maybe the best way to.
You have to keep in mind, always, you never relinquish, even in your mind, the revelation of God about himself in creation and through the Christian scriptures. And when somebody comes along and they verbalize something that is incompatible with what God has revealed, you know instantly that this is a figment of their imagination. And if it is a figment of their imagination, they will never be able to instantiate it. They will try, but they will fail. Okay. Are you understanding that the God of the Bible speaks on his own authority? He does not. This is why when people say to me, "Oh, well, how do you know your God exists?" Because he revealed himself. Well, how do you know that's revelation? By his revelation. We'll say that's circular. Say, is that a problem for God? God can't speak on his own authority. God cannot speak in a self-attesting manner. And if they say, yes, that's a problem, they have now destroyed their own position, because now even God cannot speak authoritatively. And if God cannot speak authoritatively, then how can they speak authoritatively?
That's a good point. So when people say like, "Oh, well, the Bible,"
the point is this: what they're saying is God revealing himself by his own revelation is circular. And say, why is that a problem for God? It's a problem for humans, but it's not a problem for God. Now, if they want to say it's a problem for God, you're saying, so that's fallacious, and they'll say yes. So in other words, that God himself cannot in a self-attesting, self-authenticating manner, reveal himself. Okay. Now, so then they hang themselves. They've set up the noose. They put it over the tree branch. They got up on the horse. Okay. They put the rope around their neck and they slap the horse on the rear end, and the horse gallops away, and they hang themselves.
So just to clarify, let me try to get this off. So to clarify, as far as the Hinduism way that they try to squeal and squirm out of it, basically, if
I don't want to bother talking with somebody unless they're a genuine Hindu.
Sure,
because then they're wasting my time.
I get it, and sometimes I just like to personally, if somebody says something like that, I like to be able to rip that down as well too. You know what I'm saying?
Then you can do a critique. You can do a biblical presuppositional critique of a pantheism and why pantheism is incoherent.
Well, so even if they're not now pantheism, like I have no problem doing that, but it's when people try to say like, oh well, Hinduism as an ultimate, you know what I'm saying? As a there's one creator God. So I think
what we have here is a counterfeit ultimate.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? And the way you defeat a counterfeit is by showing the property set of the genuine ultimate.
Yeah, so then
the counterfeit ultimate will not have the character set. Okay, so there's no creator-creature distinction.
So what you're saying
is is there evil? Well, then is there evil in the world? Is there truth and falsehood in the world? Because if there is, that's all a part of the ultimate God. He tells the truth and he lies, and he argues with himself.
So ultimately, I think one of the better things to do is just to simply compare and contrast. Be like, look, like this is how the God of the Bible has revealed himself in the redemptive love that he's shown throughout history prophetically.
Why does there need to be redemption in a world where all is God? God needs to redeem himself.
Yeah, but I'm going under the impression that maybe
I've already showed you that I've given you a devastating blow to Hinduism. We're done. You know, when the body's dead, there's no point in shooting more bullets in it. It's dead. Look, I was just watching a clip from Enemy at the Gates, which is a great World War II sniper movie.
Yeah,
and there were all these dead Russian soldiers that the Germans came up, and they're all dead in this water fountain, a dried up water fountain. And the Russian soldiers came in and they're firing machine gun bullets, you know, with the, what do they call it? The Sturmgewehr, into all these dead bodies. And they're just doing it just to make sure that they were dead. They weren't just pretending. But, you know, once we've slain their fake ultimate, why do we need to keep on killing it?
So the main thing is, if I'm addressing again, like I said, I asked a couple times, drill it in my head. So the main thing, the bullets that you're talking about as far as killing this notion, as far as not addressing them the pantheistic type, but when they're claiming that it's a one-time ultimate, the best.
Any pretender that claims to be an ultimate isn't going to stand.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, especially if we're to dive then into how that Hindu God has revealed himself.
God himself. First, we always have to keep in mind, whether we verbalize it or not, that there are no other gods. Isaiah 43, 44, 45, 46. God says there are no other gods. They just don't exist. So you must always keep in mind that when somebody comes along and says, no, I don't accept your God, I don't accept your ultimate, you always keep in mind, whether you state it or not, this is just a figment of their imagination. And if it is indeed a figment of their imagination, they're not going to be able to instantiate it. Only a perfect God, such as the God of the Bible, can instantiate himself.
I have a question.
Sure. Come closer to your microphone, please.
Is this better?
Yeah, go for it. By the way, if I sound terrible, I have a cold.
That's okay. I hope you feel better soon. But is there a way to like kind of get in line for questions? I just joined this voice channel, so I kind of wanted to know how this is working, or if it's just an open mic.
It's open mic as long as people aren't trolling or being disruptive.
Okay. Then I'm gonna listen in a little bit and see kind of like what this is about, because I'm a Christian myself. I'm interested.
Well,
in
we're
this
just
topic.
explaining that God has revealed himself in creation in an undeniable, irrefutable way. When unbelievers hear that, they snark, but they have nothing to say in response, because any response that they give will be indefensible.
That's true. Many of them like to say that the proof that we provide isn't real proof. But
That's a counterclaim. There's a difference between proof and persuasion. Okay, in the Bible makes it clear. We must never surrender what God has revealed and put it on an equal footing with what the unbeliever says. So God makes himself clear. And by the way, the unbeliever is going to do likewise. He's not going to surrender his autonomy of mind. He's opposing the autonomy of the mind of God when he rejects Christianity. So he's not going to surrender his autonomy, nor should we surrender the autonomy of God when he reveals himself. So God says in Scripture that he has revealed himself in an objectively grounded and undeniable way. Now, it makes no difference that the unbeliever says, well, I don't buy it. Okay, fine. That's a counterclaim. The fact that they are unpersuaded is not a defeater. Now, we're not saying that our rationale is true because their position is indefensible. We're saying is that the revelation of God is true because it's self-authenticating in and of itself. And if it is indeed self-authenticating, then the counterclaim itself is null and void. It can't be instantiated. So we shouldn't be unfazed when they say, nope, you haven't proven that. Say, well, can you prove that I haven't proven it? And then right then and there, what they're going to do is they're going to reach into their American Atheist canvas tote bag and pull out one of the 107 stratagems of misdirection. And they're going to say, well, you're shifting the burden of proof. Say, no, I've already made a case for God. You don't accept it. So do you follow your own principle? Is your not God world proven? And they don't follow it. Ask any unbeliever, why don't you believe in God? Well, he's not proven. Okay, good. Is the not God world proven? You see, as a Christian, we have to recognize we must never surrender what God's position of authority and what he has revealed. Never. And I'm just saying, even in our own minds. And so we have to evaluate what our opponents are saying in the light of what God has revealed, not just based upon human reasoning alone. Because in the biblical worldview, all human reasoning derives and depends upon the mind and the purpose and the plan of God. So whatever that comes out of their mouth, short of accepting God's revelation of himself in creation and through human history in the scriptures, whatever they say that is in opposition just simply boils down to a figment of their imagination. And their figment of their imagination cannot be defended. It cannot be instantiated. Romans 1. Are you familiar with Romans 1? Ever since the beginning of the creation of the world, God's eternalness, his eternal powers, his attributes have been clearly seen through everything that has been made, so that men are without a defense. In other words, the revelatory nature of individual and collective things within creation undeniably and irrefutably reveal the eternal, and they could only reveal the eternal if and only if the eternal was a mind and purpose that they did. Now, the non-acceptance of such a case is one that cannot be made. If they just say, nope, I don't buy it, that statement is a clandestine counterclaim, and they're going to have to defend it. And when you point that out to them, they're immediately going to go, Oh, well, you're shifting the burden of proof. How am I shifting the burden of proof? I just made a case for God and you didn't accept it. So let's see if you're really sincere and you're not just a rebel against God's revelation of himself, and that you just love your own personal autonomy and don't want to acknowledge the autonomy of God by virtue of his revelation and creation. Say, do you apply the same criterion of belief that you use to dismiss God? Do you apply that criterion of belief to your not God world? And the answer is no, they do not. Okay, so what we're doing is we're not placating the unbeliever on their own terms. We're always keeping in mind that we will not be disloyal to God, even within the quietness of our own mind. And the moment the unbeliever contradicts God, then we hold them to their own claim. Say, good, show me how that holds up.
Okay. And I do have one question. It's more of a personal question, but so I have a friend. His name is Nick. We'll call him Nick. And he claims he's a Christian. You know, I've known him for many years, and he's like my best friend. But recently, he's been kind of more softening up to a lot of leftist ideology, such as like he believes in transgenderism. And when I try to tell him
I'll tell you right now, then he's not a Christian. Because if he has a Bible, God makes it very clear. There's just males and females. That's it.
Yeah. So when I try to tell him, well, do you believe God makes mistakes? And I'm trying to remember like what he said as an argument back, but
look,
yeah.
What you need to point out to him is what he is buying into is a recent ideology that's been festering for a couple of decades that originated with John Money. Okay? Do some research on John Money. John Money was a perverted psychologist who originated this idea that gender is simply and only a social construct.
How come a lot of leftists have told me that like that wasn't like the first transgender, researcher? I don't know. A lot of them have been claiming recently that
that may be the case. However, historically speaking, we can trace the predominant transgender ideology to a large extent to the work of John Money. It doesn't mean that he's the only culprit.
Okay.
Okay, so you can acknowledge what they're saying while still confirming that John Money is the major culprit in this. Here's another thing is this. If gender is only a social construct, why are so many of these people trying to alter their bodies? Okay, see, this is the dead giveaway about how they're deceiving themselves and everybody else. If gender is not the same thing as sex, why are they trying to alter their body?
I actually haven't looked at it that way. Holy cow.
It's pretty fucking simple, Riley.
Yeah, well, that's an atomic bomb defeater for them. There would be no, listen, if gender has nothing to do with sex, then there's just simply no need. If gender is only a social construct and is not an outgrowth and emanates from biological sex, then there would be no need, nor would there have to be a desire to change your body type.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, this is probably like one of the factors why he's started to soften up to
Well, I'm going to tell you
transgenderism.
right now, he's not a Christian, okay?
He does believe in God. I know that for a fact.
Okay,
but
fine.
I think he's
Yeah,
wavering.
See,
Yeah,
I'm
I
seeing
think
this
he's-
too.
Okay, look, he probably believes in God, but ask him this question. Ask him if he believes in evolution. Okay?
Okay.
I'll bet you 9 times out of 10, he's going to say he does. The theory of evolution plays a large part of this ideological outcome. Now, it took, excuse me, I have the hiccups. This took many decades to snowball, starting in the mid to late 19th century. So, it took over 100 years, 10 decades now we're into the, the 2020s, for the, people have now relegating the idea that we're creatures of God as just fit for just simply greeting cards. They really don't take it seriously that we're created by God. They think that biological goo millions or billions of years ago is their creator. And so then human beings are just simply a cosmic biological accident. And therefore, if some Fruit Loop thinks that he's something that he's not, well, he just evolved to be that way. And so why should we be opposed to what they are evolved? They're just being who they are, right? I mean, this is the height of narcissism. Okay.
Oh man, that's like a perfect way of putting it.
Okay, so the point is, we are not what we think we are. We are what God created us to be, and we are what God says we are. We are not what we imagine ourselves to be. So once the theory of evolution metastasized and spread throughout the world, pretending to be this very strong scientific case of biological descent, which it's not, okay? The humanity in the 20th century, or a certain degree of humanity, no longer wanted to acknowledge God, but they wanted to acknowledge the creation as their creator, as Romans 1 says. So rather than acknowledge their creatureliness, right, what they'll say is, well, I'm not saying they're saying this, I'm just saying this is inherent in their position. What is inherent is that you're not what God made you to be. You're not what God says you are. You're whatever you imagine. I gotta be me. Remember Sammy Davis Jr.? I gotta be me. I gotta be me. Right? You hear these people talking all about, they need to express themselves. They gotta be themselves. This is all language and vocabulary covering up for their own perverted, sinful disposition. They're in rebellion against God, but it's like somebody scooping up a fresh chunk of dog poop on the sidewalk and putting Betty Crocker icing on it and telling you it's a brownie.
Yeah, I don't know. Like in the end, I really want him to kind of return to his faith, like as his best friend. And I'm like worried about him right now. And I think one of the biggest things that have played into his kind of starting to believe more. Now, he's pretty much always claimed to me that he's a leftist, but I see like who he is, inside, and
yeah.
I want to help him out.
That's good. I think there's a more fundamental problem. These are just symptoms. What you're telling me are symptoms. The underlying symptoms is he's not really born again. He's not really a believer.
Yeah. I don't know. I think one of the reasons he started believing this transgender stuff is because he's been in a low time in his life, and he slept with one trans person one time, so that may have like influenced him in a way, and like I don't know.
Well, this is just a symptom. Look, there are people. We have parables that Jesus gave about the parable of the sower. There are people who profess to be believers, but then when they come into more contact with the sins of the world, the temptations of the world, and then their devotion to God disappears because it really wasn't there.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of like, I guess that's just kind of like a sad truth that I kind of need to face,
When are you going to run for president, Darth?
Oh, I'm not smart enough to be president.
That'd be pretty funny.
But if I did become president, the planet would immediately become much, much lighter because of all the atheists on Discord jumping off of bridges.
There'd be a lot
That's
more
true.
violence.
But by the way, I have a
Yes.
question. Why haven't I seen you around more places? Like, do you have a YouTube channel or something? It says that you're verified. You have a verified role
No,
or something.
well,
Where can I find you?
I have a couple of user accounts, but I don't upload anything. I'm on Discord. I'm on Clubhouse. I was on Clubhouse for about a year. I'm still on Clubhouse. I was off of Discord for about a year because certain server owners wouldn't stop the trolling and the stalking and the harassment. But now they seem
It's kind
to
of funny
be,
though.
now they seem
If
to be
you wanna-
committed because they know. Let me just say this: when I left certain servers for at a minimum of a year, and they realize that way they want me around, and so now they're stopping the harassment because they know that if the stalking and the harassment goes on, I go bye. Okay, so that's their loss, not mine.
It's kind of funny though.
Wait,
If you do
is
want to
the
look them
is
up
the
on
politics
YouTube,
server one of those servers? Because I stand behind what you're saying. If it's
Oh,
politics.
this is
server,
not a secret. I've left this server for quite a long period of time, any number of times. But this time around,
yeah.
it seems that they're serious about stopping the stalkers and the harassers. They haven't
But
given
all
me
servers had a-
look. They haven't given me everything I've requested.
Mhm.
if you
But
do want to watch him on YouTube, hold on a second. If you do want to watch him on YouTube, it's kind of funny because a guy records him a lot. That also he's like he tries to troll Darth a lot. But I think it's kind of funny because if anything, he's doing God's work in a way because Darth gets in conversations with other people. And then Darth, rips him up and he posts it. So there's a guy named Tom Rabbit that if you look up YouTube, his name is Tom Rabbit. You find all
But
kinds of videos.
there's selective uploads where he only uploads where there's fireworks and maybe I might drop an F-bomb or get angry at somebody. He doesn't upload the vast majority of the civil and productive conversations and debates that I have because that's not his purpose. His purpose is to take
Discordian of a CNN. He's basically like a Discord version of a CNN
it's even worse
investigator
than
or
that.
journalist.
It's worse than that.
But I will say this though, there's still good content to be seen of Darth putting them on the spot and them not having an answer. There still is that. Yeah, you're right. There is a lot of that goes on that maybe doesn't put everything out there. But there is still good content in putting you putting your worldview and you addressing them not being able.
So this guy's name is Tom what?
Tom Rabbit. Yeah.
And also, you should be aware that there's also a thriving rumor mill that spreads slander and defamatory statements about my own personal life, which are not true. Okay.
Oh yeah, I know. Like I've seen it all, dude. Like they did the same with every Christian.
They accuse me of being guilty of domestic violence. They accuse me of being an adulterer, spreading sexually transmitted diseases. I mean, these people are disgusting.
Yeah, I've had I'm a Christian and I'm in a university town, so you can kind of guess how.
But also stick around, and you're gonna learn how to biblically defend the faith, and in such a way that's going to leave the unbelievers gobsmacked, and that they're either going to have to sit there in silence, or they're going to have to resort to deception, which is usually what they do.
But yeah, and keep in mind if you do end up watching any of these videos, most of the people that he ends up recording, that Darth talks to, are your everyday, slimy, evasive, lying atheists that he talks to that deserve a certain.
You left out greasy.
I was trying not to say scummy, but I said slimy.
I was just going to say you left that out too.
Yeah. Let's be honest here.
No, I mean, that's the truth, though. No, it is the truth, and I've gotten into it with many atheists, as he has. Maybe not in the one I'm most, maybe not as many as he has, but I put myself out there a lot with them a lot, and I get it. And so I understand a lot of times, and I think that regardless, I think that we try to do better, but sometimes it's just hard, and sometimes people need to hear how pathetic they are and how much liars they are and how they need to address the deceit that they put out every single day, that they care about. Like Darth, listen to this real quick, and I gotta go here in a second. The speakeasy the other day. Remember you were in there the other day, the speakeasy, and the guy God 420 is, I think he's like the room owner of that room on the other channel.
The guy's a pothead.
Yeah, he's that's putting it nicely. But anyway,
Shut the fuck up, Darth, you old shit.
So the other day, okay, remember you were in there the other day and you were like, okay, does anybody have a defeater for the Christian God or whatever? Your typical, whatever you say. And then he says, oh, well, this is the speakeasy. And then you guys ended up going on another topic. I forget what exactly, but then it was a non-God related topic.
Well,
but
they're when they don't troll, they're scared.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is
debate somebody who's a qualified opponent defending Christianity.
So what I'm trying to say is it's funny because just the other day he was telling you, like, oh, well, we're not going to really do that right now. But yet just earlier today, he has like a theme of his room saying God is a hypocrite, change my mind. You know what I'm saying? Like has a stage set up, God is a hypocrite. So it's like, wait a second. And I went in there and I'm like, Darth,
why shouldn't we be surprised that we have some 15-year-old trapped in a 55-year-old's body who regularly smokes pot, wanting to shake his fist at God? Well, he shakes his fist at God is because he knows God looks down with displeasure on him being a pothead. Okay, so we shouldn't be surprised.
What about gay people?
Yeah, he's more than just a pothead. He's I don't like saying things like this, but he's a nasty looking.
Well, not all potheads are this way, but a certain segment of them are.
He's more than that. He's just I don't know if you've seen him, but he's
the
just
the technical psychiatric term is train wreck.
Yes. That is good. That is exactly what he is. He looks like a train wreck. He really does.
We have rooms packed out all the time. This room, other rooms where I don't have mods, and we can hardly find any intelligent, mature-minded unbelievers to debate against it.
Pissing me off, nigga.
Okay, so this is what we get, and the only people I get are either people that are just genuine bona fide dopes, or they just troll, and they're just, like earlier today, a guy comes in, he says, prove to me God exists. And I said, well, why do I need to do that? And he wouldn't answer. Okay. Then he tried to tell me that he was unconvinced. And when I explained to him that's not informative, all I got is more trolling. Many of these people, they knowingly and they chronically engage in deceptive verbal tactics. Well, why would they do that? Do theists or Christians constantly deal in deceptive debate tactics? No, they don't.
Well, and you're right. A lot of times what I do wrong is, I got to go here in a second, but a lot of times what I need to get better at, and I have a little different approach than you, but sometimes I start going Darth mode is what I call it. But usually I try to have a sort of, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I entertain them too much sometimes. We're all kind of grant them certain things that shouldn't be granted. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what I need to get a little better at, is sticking it to them and making them address whatever needs to be addressed, because they're obviously evasive when they don't want to address certain things. I try to be as charitable as possible, but they don't do the same at all, so that's definitely something just in general got to get better at.
I'm trying to see if any of the known atheists that I've come in contact with in the U.S. Politics channel want to test their quote unquote pro debating skills in the real field here.
What you're going to find is most of them, they're just going to engage in one form or another of just deception and evasion. If they answer the questions truthfully, they're done. Okay.
So the other day, I think it was yesterday, you were talking about some scripture from the Bible saying Jesus commands you to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Did I get that correct?
Well, that goes back to the 10 Commandments.
What does that mean to you?
What does that mean? We need to treat people like we would want that the way we treat ourselves.
And could you apply that to the last 10, 15 minutes of this conversation I just listened to?
What, are you going to be cryptic again, Scott? Are we going to do the same shtick again as you did day after day?
Question. You guys are just...
You're being cryptic as usual, Scott. Scott, have I not accused you? Scott, have I not accused you on multiple days of being cryptic and evasive?
Yes,
have I not
accused me of this?
Well, gee, now I wonder why I do that.
I don't know.
Gee, I must be delusional.
I was just asking you a question. If you thought you were loving those people you're talking about as you love yourself the last 15 minutes.
What you mean? Because I criticize people?
Yeah.
What's unloving about that? Jesus criticized people.
So Dawkins, that's the question. What do you think about
Jesus referred to the reigning religious leaders as rotten corpses in whitewashed tombs. He referred to them as vipers and snakes and wolves in sheep's clothing. Now, in that culture, that was the upper level of insult that you could. The insult level couldn't get even graver than that.
Okay.
Dawkins, what do you think of Kanye West?
Hold on a second.
Your understanding of love.
Sometimes it's loving to tell people the truth about how horrible they are. So, for example, Stephen in the book, listen, in the book of Acts, it says that Stephen was filled with the Holy Spirit when he was preaching the gospel to the Jewish Supreme Court. And after they resisted accepting that Jesus was the promised Messiah, Stephen turned to them and he said, you do always resist God's Holy Spirit. You are uncircumcised in your hearts. Now, you cannot understand the level of insult that is culturally. It was so insultive to them that they took him outside the city. They grabbed him at that very moment. They took him out and they stoned him to death. Now, do you want to know, to show you how insultive it was to them, do you know that they wouldn't even do that to Jesus? Because the Romans, did you know that the Romans prohibited the Jews from carrying out capital punishment?
So
did you
Darth,
know that, Scott?
Do you think that
hold on.
on.
So, Scott, do you understand that this insult by Stephen, who was filled with the Holy Spirit, against those people who claimed that they were not only truth seekers and following reason, they were following the one true God, and Stephen gave them the worst kind of insult in that culture, in that day and age. And to show you how outraged they were because of the insultiveness of it, they killed him themselves, even though they could have gotten in trouble for killing somebody. They wouldn't even do that to Jesus. That's why they went to Pontius Pilate to have him executed. Okay? Now, I'm not saying all insults are warranted or justified, but on the other hand, it doesn't mean that they're not justified either. Go ahead. Who's the guy who was, or did he? Oh, he left. Okay. So, I mean, basically, Scott, you're a waste of time. Why does anything matter to you? You're in a not God world. Nothing means anything in your world anyway, does it?
I just want to know what you meant by love, and if you don't want to answer,
notice. No, I told you. Now, I just asked you a question. Why does that matter to you? Is not this world a cosmic accident? You don't believe that this world is designed by God, do you? See,
Why
notice.
so silent?
Yeah. Why so silent?
Oh,
no, he's here.
He didn't move.
No, he's here.
I'm here.
Yeah. You don't believe that you don't believe you're creaturely. You and I have debated on the existence of God. So you're sitting there asking me questions. Why does asking any of these questions even matter? Right now, this is a cosmic accident, isn't it? See, dead silent, folks.
Just want to know what you thought love meant.
What, and you
Okay,
wanted
if
to
you
know
don't
what
wanna
I
tell me.
thought is a cosmic accident, isn't it?
It doesn't matter. Why?
Do you see that? Here we go again, ladies and gentlemen. He reaches into the canvas tote bag of the American atheist and he pulls out one of the 107 strategies of obfuscation. He won't even admit what follows from his own God denialism, that this world is just a cosmic accident. And what you say is a cosmic accident, and what I'm saying is a cosmic accident, right?
Sure.
Good.
Scott,
Cosmic
would you
accident, yes.
Scott, would you call yourself a believer in relativism?
I just want to know what you guys thought love was. That's it.
Rapaholics.
Why is it so hard to have a conversation with you folks?
Love is
Yeah,
a value
listen,
that
Just wanna know what
Mr.
love is.
Top Hat,
They
Mr.
don't,
Top
they don't
Hat,
like answering questions.
You cannot.
Mr. Top
Just want to
Hat,
know what love is.
Yes.
Mr. Top Hat,
You cannot
please ignore Scott. Scott is not somebody who is an honest player. Now, if he was a 15-year-old, I could understand with his disingenuousness, his evasiveness, his deceitfulness, his purposeful obtuseness. But you can see from his picture that he's a grown man. Every single encounter that I've had with Scott, which have to be at least 5 or 6, if not more, he's been devious, he's been deceptive, he's been evasive. So it's pointless talking with this guy. He's made it abundantly clear he has no intentions of debating and discussing these issues in good faith.
I don't want to debate or discuss. I want to understand what you think.
Yeah, more boulder
I want to know what
dashing.
love
Yeah,
is.
really.
God, when you
really.
accept where the source
If
of love
Scott really wanted to believe, or no, not believe, but if he really wanted to, have his mind changed or was open to any
No,
of
we're
this,
done with him. He's a phony.
Become
He's a fake, a phony, and a fraud.
I don't understand why someone can't just ask.
This guy just sits there and goes, "I want to know what love is."
Why is that dishonest?
Every time. Well, first of all, are you familiar with Scott?
Yeah,
no,
Scott,
I'm not familiar. The only person I'm familiar with in this is Gank Dolph. What up, Gank Dolph?
Okay, well, you see, Scott he's completely disingenuous. Talking with him is a waste of time. Not that he disagrees. I welcome disagreement, but he's evasive. He's deceptive. He prevaricates. He obfuscates. He rabbit trails. He gives non-informative answers on purpose, and then when you confront him with it, that he denies about it. So he's a waste of time. He wants to know what love is. Well, love is just a cosmic accident, according to Scott.
There you go, Scott.
These are not sincere questions. Love and hate are neither good or bad. They're just what is in a cosmic accident.
Yeah, it kind of relates to not in my server about me.
So,
but
essentially,
the about me that's on my profile, it says, "Don't debate science or religion-based politics with people who believe in relativism. The disbelief in absolute truth means that science and religion means nothing to them, so there's nothing to debate." Because before any of that has to happen, what has to happen is that you have to convince them that there is absolute truth before debating anything like, science or, God.
So Scott, you got Darth's answer to your question. Just FYI.
Yeah, so we got the Daily Show white knighting and trolling for Scott.
Yeah, can you define white knighting? I don't really know what you mean by that.
Oh, okay. So let me ask you this: Daily Show. Do you have? What was your question?
I was asking you, what do you mean by white knighting?
I didn't hear you.
What do you mean when you say I'm white knighting for?
Precisely what you're doing. Now, do you have a history of?
That's not a definition.
Do you have a chronic history of bad behavior toward me?
Well, if someone were to ask you, then the answer would be yes.
Okay. So that was an evasive answer. I will ask you one more time. Do you have a history of bad behavior toward me?
Basically, any negative behavior or words.
Mister, would you please not interrupt Mr. Top Hat? I will ask you one more time.
Can I answer?
Do you have a history of chronically, purposely trolling and misbehaving toward me? Yes or no?
Yeah. So if you were to ask
Oh,
Darth,
good. Thank
yes.
you. Thank you. So why should we be surprised with somebody who admits that he's a chronic troll toward me, right? And by the way, I take notes on people's user accounts. That's how I know who this is. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Adam, if you want to add substantively, I don't have to agree with you, but this isn't a room for stand-up comedy.
I apologize for my mistake. The Father and Son and Holy Spirit be upon you.
Oh, okay. So you want to mock Christianity?
No,
So
I am Christian. Come on now.
All right. Okay. So now you're lying. Now you get muted. Okay, we're done.
Back and to the left.
Back and to the left. By the way, you were server deafened earlier, and you missed me saying that a couple of times. Back and to the left. Look, once it is abundantly clear to me that somebody's lying, you get server muted. Okay? It's not that I imagine that they're lying or I strongly suspect it. Once it's crystal clear to me that somebody's lying, boom, you're done. Just don't lie to me. You can disagree with me. You can tell me I'm a fool for believing in God. You can tell me evolution is science. You can disagree with me as long as you want. That makes for a great debate. Just don't engage in deception with me, okay? Because then you're wasting my time.
Yep.
Darth, the godless girl is live streaming.
Well, surprise, surprise, Sergeant Carter.
How do you feel about that?
Doesn't she have anything better to do with her life?
She's a no life.
Well, I guess she does that so she doesn't return to shooting heroin.
Facts.
Anyway, so we're just looking for a few intelligent, mature-minded atheists. All right, I'll be back in a second.
That reminds me, I'm about to shoot up real quick.
Okay, that's not Christ-like. No shooting up.
Oh, is that?
You hear that, godless girl? That's not Christ-like.
Yep.
Hey, anybody got crack on the low?
If anybody knows what Godless Girl's alternative secret accounts are, please go ahead and verbally state them now so I can write them down.
Can you imagine having that as your mother?
Facts, man. I got her friend banned from here.
About Christianity or like, any of your atheists wants to
Believing in God, we're actually looking for long, good debate. We want that. But you see, most of the people that step forward are either just really incompetent, and I don't mean that to be mean, but the bulk of them are just variants of trolls, okay? They'll start off pretending to be cordial, and then they will increasingly turn up the dial of their trolling and their evasive and their deception. Look, this shouldn't surprise us. When I encountered at least 7 to 8 atheists on Discord, professional atheists with PhDs, when I asked them the same basic, simple questions that I ask here, every single one of them became evasive. And they really didn't want their atheism to be scrutinized. Okay, so if the atheists with PhDs do that, what hope do we have for the non-PhD atheists?
Yeah. And you also you ask really hard questions to answer. Like if I was an atheist, I don't think I could defend my worldview against the questions you ask. So,
Well, it's not, look, it's not because Darth Dawkins is a super genius like Wile E. Coyote. It's because these questions I learned from Cornelius Van Til is that we never ever surrender our loyalty to what God has authoritatively stated. And so when people say things that contradict the self-attesting authoritative revelation of God, then we devise questions based upon their contradicting what God has revealed, because we know that those questions cannot be satisfactorily sustained because it's a figment of their imagination. The wisdom and the revelation of God in the Christian scriptures cannot be defeated.
Have you
I'll be
read the?
back.
Okay.
Make it quick because I have to take a break.
I was reading the Stanford page on the transcendental arguments, and like they're so, how do you say this? They're so like, at first they just describe it, but then they try to go into like refutations. But like when you read it, it's so dishonest and like weak. Like it seems like they're trying to refute it, but they can't.
Are you talking about just transcendental reasoning in general, or are you talking about biblical presuppositional transcendental arguments?
I think it's more general. It's like, namely that X is a necessary condition for the possibility of Y, where then given that Y is the case, it logically follows that X must be the case too. I think that's what they're talking about, not biblical.
Well, transcendental reasoning is not always a direct proof. It can be indirect. Okay. All right. But I got to take a break. I'll be back.
Okay.
I mean, look, if atheism was really true,
look, this shouldn't surprise us. When I
race,
encountered at
then
least 7
we would
to
be like
8
jumping around like
atheists.
little children, excited like candy. But we're just not, because there's just nothing there.
It's just funny to see like actual philosophers trying to deal with Darth's